Hello everybody, my name is Strawman Andy and welcome to rFactor 2 car tutorials. Now, as I'm sure you're aware from the page name, basically learning how to convert a basic car model into the rFactor 2 game. Now, to start with, you need to decide on what car you want, so I'll just show you what I'm going to use. I'm going to do the Formula 1 1978 mod, mainly because I felt the Brabham didn't really have anyone to race against the ISI Brabham. So what we're going to do is you're going to open the mod and you want to export it. So let's rename this folder to just simple, try again, there we go, rFactor. You can do rFactor game if you want, I mean whatever, this is all about your organisation. Now I'm going to drop it out, place it into that folder. Now once you've done that, you want to go into the folder, so you see where I've got game data, vehicles, the mod itself. You can install into the rFactor game, but it's generally not needed. Then you're going to go to Ferrari. Now in here you want to look for a mass file. Now there's two here. These are two types of bodywork. So you got the Ferrari 312 T2 and T3. Now they're just upgraded versions, but they will be different. So that's okay. We're going to name it rFactor 1 maps. This is my way of doing it. Now just paste the mass files there. So you've done that. You don't really need that because you've exported it on. Now you need the mass file, which is from the rFactor 1 game. I'll put a link in the description, free to download. Now you click that folder there, icon there. You want to go all the way to where you've gone, so documents, there you go. So go here, click it. Now you want to export everything in here, so all the way down there. Export documents, rFactor 1 maps. Now because we've got two mass files, I'll rename it so I don't personally get confused, because I probably will. So there you go. That's just simple export. Operation done. Great. Now I'm just making another folder. Same again. Maps, and then 312 T3 model. So now I'm just going to open it. Get that one. All the way to the bottom. Click. Extract, documents, new one, export. Fantastic. Right. I'm going to make another folder. rFactor 1 main, or you can call it physics. It's your choice. I generally go with physics because this is where most of the physics will be, but it's also the place where the car is loaded and how it works in game as well, so it's both. Now what you want to do is you want to take all the relevant files and make the car work. Personally, I'm just going to take all of it, so all these configuration files, don't need the mass or the PDF. PM need, let's take the sound and the TBC, that's the tyres, so we'll take that, just copy, go back to the physics, paste, go back into it, because sometimes it's not all just here. Obviously we're missing some gen files, so we'll go in here and you got cam, you got cockpit, head physics, upgrades. Now there's two upgrades obviously because there's two different models. Got gen file, again two for the different models. So we're going to just take everything apart from the mass files because we already extracted that all the way up there. Just go copy, go all the way back, physics, paste. I think, yeah, head physics, the only thing getting replaced, that's fine. So yeah, that's all the physics stuff you should need. And then if we go back into the game data, you're going to go to sounds, and here you've got all the sounds from the cars. Now I haven't looked at the sound file folder yet, so I'm just going to copy it, go back, make a new one, call it rFactor 1 sounds, just place it in here. So now we got pretty much all the relevant files apart from the skins and the team data, but that's okay, we'll get onto that later. So we've extracted all the GMTs, which is the body of the car, basically the game model, so we don't need that. Now let's open 3D Sim. That's pretty simple. It's obviously very confusing when you look at it, but if you go File, Import Objects, we go to Documents, so go to where it is. Now here we go. Now you can load in more than one, so if you just hold left click on the mouse, drag all the way down, you can open it, or if you really want you can just load in one. So there you go, it's just one object, but personally just load them all in. There you go. Now it does look weird, that's okay. Don't need to worry, so that's fine, but at the moment it's all an rFactor 1 GMT, which won't work with rFactor 2 pretty much. So what you want to do is you want to go to Export. Now you see rFactor 2, you've got other game modes here. Basically to export, to make an rFactor 2, you literally just click rFactor 2, the logo here on the export, and save rFactor 2 objects. Now just go to Documents, and here you go, you can see what you've done. Now you want to make a new folder that's called rFactor 2 Maps. It's a T2 model, so save as a T2 file folder, and you just want to, when you click OK, everything will be exported in terms of the model. So you click OK, and it's done, bottom right corner's gone. Now you want to go to Export Textures, and you hit that, and again that's all the textures, so all the colour you can see, that's all the files being loaded onto the car. So you need those, otherwise, and I'll just show you why. If you go back to File and Import, if you go to here, let's just load, simple, it's all pink because all the files you see here haven't been exported, so the program can't find it. But you just want to go Export Textures, go here, click OK again, just go yes. If there's missing files, it normally tells you in a box here saying couldn't find the files, the textures, you need to find them, but obviously no issues there. Now if you load in an rFactor 2 model, there we go, and this is an rFactor 2 GMT. It is pretty simple like that. There's obviously more work to come, but that's it, all the textures are there, you've got everything you need, so that's great. So you can close that, and you might want to, let's just load in the other one, the other model. In we go, okay, same situation, export as an rFactor 2. Let's make a new folder, maps, and then free, it's a free model, there we go, free, press OK, exported, export textures, in that, yes. No missing files, fantastic, out we go. Just quickly load it in. Let's go to new one, let's just do body max again, and yep, it's all there. No missing textures. So there you go. Now that's the basics of it, and it's not that difficult. The issue though is once you import as an object, you can see here you've got import and import as objects. Now import as objects means you can load in multiple ones, which is great. However, when you export, all the pivot points which you can see there for stuff like the steering wheel is very, very important. So that's where it pivots. So when you turn, it's pivoting on this axis here. So where that logo is, it pivots there so the wheel doesn't just freely move around, which you'll see in game because I won't fix it. I'll show you what it's like without a pivot point. As you can see, pivot point here has nothing, which isn't good, but if we go import and we'll go here, and I'll just show you what it's like. Now this is why you save as an rFactor 1 model and don't overwrite, because if you go to edit center model and set pivot point, it tells you the pivot point it has originally. So from the rFactor 1 game, they've most likely made it pretty good. Maybe it needs slight adjustment, that's nothing to worry about. You can do that by adjusting these values here. You can adjust that so it centers more in the middle, then rotates better, but it should be fine unless you know it's wrong. But exporting it, unless you've imported it as just as import or one of those two plugins, it will wipe all the pivot points, which is okay for wheels and tyres and stuff as long as they're all not got a pivot point, but for steering wheels that's going to be an issue. So you're going to have to, that's why you make sure you have a backup, so you can just basically write down or copy Control C on each of the points and paste it and export it so you get the pivot point back. And to get the pivot point back, here you go, if you go in here you've got to import it as a singular object like this, set pivot point, and do it in here. I'll just do a random number for now, 0.1, there we go, and you go export as a model, and then you save it, and that means you can only import one model, one GNT at a time, but it should save the pivot point. Now it's important when you go to edit textures and material settings that if you're importing lots of objects and you import the wheel, when you export it again you will lose the pivot point again, which obviously sucks. So you've done the main bit. Obviously we'll get to the texture bit in a bit, but we've exported it, so now it's an rFactor 2 model. No textures were missing, which is good, and you can see all the textures are now here. Everything you should need is all in there. You don't need the output, so you can just delete that. I mean, it doesn't make a difference. So delete, you got all the stuff you can need. If you really want, you can just go in, because you know you've exported all the textures, you can just copy and then paste. You probably most likely miss one or two in the tyres where they've got basically that 2 represents the stuff it loads in on in here on 3D Sim, but in game it only, because it's a rotating texture material, it starts off, so it goes 2 1 0, as you can see by the event here. You can change it and just make it a 2, and it should start, no, because it's 2. Hang on, I'll just do that. Now you can see visibly the wheel has stopped the motion of rotation from the textures, so it just adds the effect of the wheel moving faster. We'll get on to improving that later, because there are improvements we can do, but again we just want to make sure everything's exported as an rFactor 2 model, which it is now, which is good. So now what we want to do is you want to make a rFactor 2 file, a folder, call this one physics, there we go. Now I'm gonna, obviously these cars are basically going to be based on the Brabham, and as you can see the Brabham is installed, so what you want to do is you go in to your rFactor GM2 Mass 2 basically. It comes with all of rFactor 2 games, don't need to download it, it should be with it. If it's not, I can't help you there, but it should all be there. So you go to it's the same way as the old one, click on the folder and you want to go to where your game is. Mine is a long way, so go Steam. Now you want to go installed vehicles. Now you want to find the car you want to maybe use. I mean, this is me personally, because obviously I know I've done a car that has physics already made for it. I will adjust it for the Ferrari, make it different and maybe faster, because obviously it's a 1978 car, not a 75, so technology's improved a bit, maybe more power, you know, that, but we'll come on to that. Because go to a car that you feel represents your car, or you want to base on. So it's normally in something called name of the car and then car at the end, or something called main. But sometimes they split it, so here you see main and physics, they split it in 2. Sometimes locked for obvious reasons, like they don't want to share the data. But if you've got, I mean, here you go, it's a private mod, he's not private but he's as a third party, so saved it as main, it will be in there, but you generally should be able to work it out, because when you open it, if I show you, just go, you can see we've got the cam, gens, so we've got the main one for the game and the spinner, the main physics, HDV, chassis file, damage, cockpit, upgrades, the engine, the gears. This is a talent file, gotta get onto that, sound, TBC, and then the new rFactor 2 tyres, TGM. So that's all the physics you need in one mass file. Now, because I know I'm basing on it, I'm just going to go extract. I'm going to do the same thing again. Go back here. I'm going to make another folder actually. I'm going to call it rFactor 2 BT44 physics. So there you go. I'm going to save it in there. Click OK again. So there you go. If I go to it, all the stuff you need for the new physics rFactor 2 is all in here. But you've also got the old physics, which is relevant, and the gen file is definitely relevant. So is the cockpit information. The other stuff can be edited and adjusted. The sound file is also important. If you want to keep the same sounds as before, you can obviously change them. It's all interchangeable as long as you know what you're doing. It's basically a path sequence. You've got to make sure all the files are here, so it can load in the game to start with. Then the gen is there for all the body parts, so you tell it what to load. Now, I'm going to take certain bits from this. So the chassis is the suspension and the chassis of the car, but how it works in game, so the flex, the weight of the wheels and all that, and basic, it's your PM suspension file from rFactor 1, just a more developed version. In the same way, the TGM files are a better version of the TBC. So TBC is rFactor 1, old fashioned, and you definitely need a TGM to make it work in rFactor 2. You technically don't need a chassis file if you have a PM file. So if you want, you can use the original PM files, but you might want to update it slightly, change it. A chassis file is more advanced, it does give better handling and feedback in some ways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, I'm going to take the engine and gears, I'm going to take the chassis, because that's suspension, I want that, the HDV, might as well take the engine and gears for now, we'll work on that later. Definitely the TBC and the TGMs, just copy that, go to our folder, paste that in there, fantastic. Then you go rFactor 1 physics, and I'm going to take the cam files, so that's the cameras, the damage, the cockpit information, head physics, yeah, I can take that from the new one, it won't be, that's just how the visual head moves, and it is pretty interchangeable, it's not disastrous if you don't have it. Upgrades, make sure you take the right one, because obviously I've got two different, got the T3 and the T2, that one's T2, so I'm guessing that one's a T3, so I'll take the T2, same with the gens, HDV, take that, suspension is not really needed, sound file is, we'll take that, so you just want the cameras, damage, file, the cockpit information, the upgrades, if it's got one, and the spinner and the normal gen, the HDV, the PM if you need it, but if you're using a rFactor 2 base car, I would say use what it's put and done, so you take that suspension and PM files, take the sound files. I mean, you can take it all if you really want, but it's just a lot more work. Obviously for me, for this example, we've got what we need. So if you go type, you should have a camera, got the suspension / PM, so there's the chassis, got an engine, got a damage file, got cockpit information, gears, upgrades. Now I've got 2 gen, which need the HDV of the new one and the old one. We'll combine that, make it work with the new rFactor 2 system, because there are differences again, same way as it's similar, but there are still differences. Taking the sound file, and they got the new tyres, which is very important. Now, we just need to, because obviously we're taking bits and bobs, you can't just throw it in the game and say make it work. You've got to, it's a path sequence. So let's start off with the old HDV of the Ferrari. Now I'm going to open a new one as well and put it side by side. Obviously it looks similar. You've still got the under tray bits here, so that's the floor of the car and graphical offset. It's still similar system. Obviously if you've done it before, again, you will understand how it works, but it is a different approach in doing it. So to start with, because these cars are quite similar, I'm just going to copy and paste all the way down to the damage file. So copy that. I'm just going to go paste and we'll go. There you go. Now damage file, we'll leave that as it is. And I'm just going to copy all of this again. Graphical offset into the both zeros, that's great. Go back down, back to the tyre. So next line we'll go back all the way here and paste again. After the tyre, just going to copy that all the way down to the pit menu. All the way to the pit menu, and I'm just going to get rid of all this because it's not everything I'm copying is fine. You know, if you really want to save it, you can, but because obviously these cars, as I said before, pretty similar. Obviously going to be different, only 3 years apart. So you can adjust stuff like the height of the car, which is here. So that's the height of the weight. You can adjust the fuel position, tank here. The weight and the way the weight reacts in game here. If you want the where the position is, the right side, the rear. You know, graphical offset is pretty good. If the car is too high, you generally go something like this. So a negative number. Obviously, it doesn't need to be that much. Probably like that. Should lower it depending on if it's high. If it's too low, you raise it as a positive. But we'll leave it at 0 now. See what it's like in game. That's fine, but personally, for me, I know the cars are going to be similar. They're both Formula 1s from the 70s. They're both, you know, mid-engines. They both seem to weigh the same from the physics. I mean, this one's 10 kilograms lighter, but it's not huge, and we can definitely make it heavier. That's fine. We can change that later on, but for the main purpose of this is just making sure all the files can find each other and works in game, and you want it in game. Because if you can't get in game, then you've obviously missed something, or something's not linked up correctly, which will be a pain. So you've done all that. Now, the damage file you can rename. It's your choice, but I didn't take the Brabham one, so that's fine, that's still there. I did take the tyres. Now the tyres I'm going to change, and I'm going to call... let's call it just Ferrari 1970 tyres. So we're going to copy that. Move you out of the way. Now this is the tyres we took from the rFactor 2. Oops, the tyres we took from the rFactor 2 model. I'm just going to rename it. Boom. And then you don't need to change these names of TGM because in here all the names all the way down. Here we go. So you got the slick fronts and the TGM is called that. And if we look here, yep, it's still there. So you don't need to change the name. You can if you want, but if you change the name here, you've got to change the name there. That's a crucial part. In the same way, if you change the name of any of these files, you've got to make sure whichever file it's looking for, if it's the HDV or the cockpit information, you've got to make sure that's been updated. Otherwise, it's not going to find it, and the game's just going to crash or not load the car. So that's fine. We'll close that. And we go back in here, load up the Brabham again. So everything up to pit menu has been updated now. So we don't need that, we'll get rid of that. So we'll just, from the pit menu on, I think we can just copy and paste, because there's no folders it's looking for. This is all the physics. Don't worry, we'll explain it later, but for now I'm just going to copy and paste all the way down to the suspension. So this is all the pit is how long it takes in the pits, what can be changed, how it can be changed, so individual tyres, individual pressures, all that. Then you got penalties for having traction control, auto shift, all that. You can add penalties to the weight, to the balance of the car, etc. Left fender and right fender is bits on the bodywork basically. Front wing is obviously front wing, rear wing, rear wing. Body air is how the car reacts in the air, so how the air going over it reacts and how much drag. Again, diffuser is the rear of the car, so we're just going to paste, leave that. Now we've got to suspension. So we go to suspension. Now here you can see you've got something called an ultra chassis, and here you've got physics model. Now because this is the old PM file and this is the new version of suspension, so it is slightly different, so you've got to be careful what you change here. I'm just going to go all the way to front wheel track, which you can see is here. We just go copy that up to here. I'm going to go paste. None of this is needed because we haven't taken the old PM file, because we want to use the new one because it is better. Paste, there we go. Now we can change the name of that, so let's change it to just, oh, I keep doing that. Let's change it to Ferrari 312T. Just copy that, leave it as it is, and then here again, paste that new name. There you go. So it's searching for that. Can it find it? Yes, it can. And inside that is all the suspension and the bodywork. So how much the front weighs, how much the rear weighs, and then the spindle, left, front, right front, etc., etc. The wheels, fuel tank measurement, and then it gets really complex here. This is just mind-boggling stuff. Again, doesn't need adjusting, just the name of it. Leave it as is. So go back to the Brabham example. Now, front wheel track is saying 1.4, etc. That's telling you how wide the car is. It's very similar on the Ferrari, but obviously in game, the wheel track changes the width of the car where the wheels are placed. So how far in they go, how far out they go, basically. If you run it at 0, it just runs at the graphical setting it currently has. So if we load it into 3D Sim, I'll just quickly show you. Basically, if we look at that, it will load the wheel if we put it at 0 in the HDV at that position. So it shouldn't change. In the same way, if you have the left and rear wheelbase at 0, it will stay here. But if you move it, you can obviously, let's say we put in as 2.4, it might make the wheel go like that and move it obviously in the wrong position. That's too far back for what it is designed, because obviously here is where it's meant to be. So for now, we'll just leave all those at 0 because that's fine. You can see in the previous mod they've said it should be this and this and this, but they've not implied it. Doesn't matter, we've got examples here, we can work around it, that's fine. So now, the left wheelbase, we're going to actually, no, what we're going to do is we're going to copy those because they are new. Copy, go here, go paste button, you're going to go 2 dashes and put 0, 0. Let's just do that. This again rFactor 2's new way of doing it, but if you leave it at 0 it will be at the graphical default, which is fine. So we'll leave it at that. Now, pretty basic here, up to there. The rest is going to be deleted because it's old fashioned and doesn't work with the new files. Controls are different as well now because it's doing something called max steering torque, whereas before it was this. I've seen personally people do, like, you can change the weight of it in game with an upgrade file. I'm personally not a fan because rFactor 2 allows you to change it in game without doing any necessary upgrades. So I personally just, if you want to adjust the strength, you change this number. And yeah, I don't personally see the need to make it an upgrade file, but some people do. Entirely their choice. For now, if it doesn't work, you just go back and delete it. I mean, that's the best way. It's trial and error sometimes. So I'm going to go all the way down. Push that there. I'm just going to get rid of this because it's all not really needed, and you still got the same stuff as before, like the downshift and the upshift, but you now get, so can you, if you stall on track, you can get a marshal to push you, and you can get pit crew to push you in the pit lane. The same stuff as before, but there's new ways of doing it. Don't worry about all this because it looks really confusing, but it's basically, this is just a special section. You don't actually need it, but we'll keep it because obviously here you can see it's telling you percentage. So when you put it in game, it will be like, you click down the option, it will be like 100% or 83, and it's better than having just a random number, which sometimes doesn't make sense. If you have a percentage, you'll be like, oh okay, I understand the max power I'm getting from the brakes or how much I'm losing. That's a pretty unique and good feature to have. Makes it easier for sometimes, and the same with steering lock. Rather than having a random number, it can tell you the degrees. So it's got here, it's telling you this will be the final letters / word that will be at the end of the number. So it gives a more precise reading, I guess, is the best way to say it. Go to engine, and because we copied the engine, we're just going to copy that. Don't need that because all those like speed limiter and stuff was already in there, but we've changed. There we go. If we change the name of that, let's just go Ferrari. Just put engine in because I will probably forget that's an engine. Copy. Here we go. Change the file. Save. Easy peasy. Same with driveline. You've got new rFactor 2 stuff here. So this is actually the position of the gearbox. You can see it's more at the rear with 93 and all that. The gearbox is definitely the rear. So it's basically telling the chassis file how to react, where it is more. At least I think. I mean, if I'm wrong, oh dear. I've had to learn by myself, as I'm sure many people have. So I'm just going to go all the way down to the wheel drive bit, copy that. I'm just going to get rid of the font. Don't need you. Paste. Because obviously using the same engine from the rFactor 2 model, we need all that information put here, otherwise stuff like the clutch and the torque, if we try and use the old one, it might not match and you'll get clutch slipping or the engine revving too much and you're not getting the correct drivetrain, and it will just be a nightmare. So the gear files, that's fine. It's not major. Might change it in the future, but for now we'll leave it. Then we're going to change the diffs. So this is at the end, as you can see. Diff, pump, all that is pretty similar. It's just copy and paste, easy. It's the same with the suspension at the end here, but because we've used the new suspension files, the stuff like the position of the push rods is going to be completely wrong, and it won't really work correctly in game. So what you do, because we've used the same tyres and we use the same suspension and all the other physics before, you just go all the way to the bottom, copy all the way here, paste. That's it. Now I'm going to go save, and that in theory should mean everything in here is linked. You don't need that, that's the old one. So get that out of the way just before I get confused. And yeah, that should be all the physics linked up and working game. It won't be perfect, maybe. Well, won't be just yet, it's still a lot to do, but it's workable. I'm going to go to gem files. Now these are not the most fun things, I guess. They can be very confusing. Personally, all this is just information to help you. It doesn't really make a difference to me. It can be helpful, I guess, but I find it personally a bit confusing. What I'm going to do though, I'm going to copy this bit. This is the search path. I'm going to paste in here, and now it's basically, if you go to rFactor, we go back here, we open this, you can see it's searching for that, but it's searching for the maps. So you can see it's saying look for this car and look for that mass, and there it is in that folder with the name there. doesn't need to be precise, but you need to have a link. I personally make it exactly the same, but obviously it's clear you don't need to make it 100% the same name here as there. It just needs to have, you obviously Bradman BT44, and there you go, the two middle ones match that. And it's going, look for the maps, so the maps we know are in there, and it's already said here specifically is the maps with all these models. So if you want to find that, it's in this mass. Where is it? In that folder. Go in there. Easy, found, easy peasy. So we're going to copy the same layout. Let's call it Ferrari 12T2. Just going to copy that. So that's the folder name. It will be in game. Again, same thing there. Same thing here. And then again here, but then the mass file you're going to want to call that, and we're going to call it maps. So that is the specific mass file we will create, and that's what it's going to be called. Make sure that is the same. That's the crucial part. If that isn't the same, or if it's something else and you load the car in with another car, it might conflict, it might get confused and crash, which is not ideal. So you don't want that. So let's go on to editing these files. So we're just going to make it level. So as you can see, it's pretty similar. Let's get rid of that gap. That's annoying. Pretty similar. You've got max, high, mid and low. And yep, that's still all there. So it's pretty similar how the loads and GMTs work, but obviously here they've got 4 to choose from, we only have 3. Doesn't make a difference though, we're all going to have difference. This line has got 2 dashes. 2 dashes means ignore this line, or ignore what's behind it. So we're going to just delete that because it's clearly not needed. You don't need dots. You can do dots. You can go, if you really want to be precise, you can go like that. Personally, it's not really needed anymore. It is just taking up space. But we can see, you can see loads in at 0, loads out at 150, and then the second one comes in, and it ends then, and then the last one is there. That's for max, for high, for mid, and for low. That's all the same situation. It's just lowered the load outs and load ins and stuff to make it better frames per second in the game. That's fine, but the main thing you want to do here is you want to go and take this shadow caster, which is basically how when the light of the when the light in game hits the car, it causes that model to cause a shadow. Before in rFactor 1 you had a GMT basically called, there you go, shadow, and that created your shadow in that. You don't need that anymore, so that's fine, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. So basically you're just going to go paste. For loadout and stuff, I normally go around 50, but because the models, it's not bad, but obviously it's not new, so I'm going to make it, yeah, 50 should be okay. You can't notice too much in the distance when it gets to 50, and 200 is a long way, so go 200. So you go, you got the max, mid and low. Now, personally, when I get to the last one, I go false sometimes, but for the time being, actually, we'll just keep it as true. I don't know if it actually saves you much frames per second, but it could do. It might not. So obviously now that's the important part done. You can change the high, medium if you want. I personally do it later on, because I run my graphics on max. If you don't, you might want to change it. And then you go, now if you go collision under shadows, we don't have any of those yet, but that's not important, and we don't need the shadow, so let's just get rid of that, because that's not an undershadow, that's a shadow reflecting the body in the old game. Collision, we'll just put 2 dashes there, it's not critical right now. So let's just go onto the cockpit. Okay. So as you can see, the cockpit's telling us it's loading in the cockpit file, the nuts, the mirrors, and the front suspension has to be blanked out, so I guess it doesn't need it, which it won't. So what I'm going to do, delete those, there we go. If it's not needed, it's not needed. And same as before. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, reflect true is basically on a wet ground. You can see the reflection of this model on the ground. But it's not, that's interesting. Okay, ISI issue there, that's not ours. So that's needed because obviously when it's wet, you normally get a mirrored image of what's on the track, and if that line reflect true is not there, you don't see it on the wet ground. So it looks like looks odd because everything else on the track model is normally reflecting. So you want that to be there to look like it's really reflecting. It is basically there. Simple as. So we got rid of the two lines we don't need. Now here, 5 is fine. This is just what's being reflected. But we do know that the first line here isn't actually needed, the cockpit one, because if we open the body of the car, we can see inside there is a cockpit. Now the first lines you put on the GMT here, all these will load with whatever's put here. So when you go into cockpit view, the body or whatever you put there will load with it. Now because we have the cockpit already in, it's a pretty good one. I already know this. If we insert body max and cockpit, I'll just show you. If I go like this, you can see clearly it's the exact same cockpit. The cockpit's obviously got less textures around it because you can't see them when driving, but it's exactly the same cockpit. I know that. So that line actually isn't needed. Your car may have a worse cockpit. So what you're going to do is actually you have to go make 2 GMTs, and you're going to have to rename one of them to body in. So if you import body max, what you'd have to do, annoyingly, if you've got a low, if the bodywork comes with a low detailed cockpit, you're going to have to individually delete each face. As you can see, it just goes away. That's a big one. So it's going to take oh wait, no, I didn't get, there you go. So you can see it's going, it is a pain. You can cheat and go, if you hold control and drag left mouse button over it, you can go like that, but you got to be careful because if I do that here, I'm going to get rid of some of the bodywork, and look, oh dear, I've left a massive gaping hole, taking away a bit of the bodywork as well, so that's not ideal. But yeah, that's unfortunately what rFactor 1 models do. They have a low definition cockpit attached to it, because rFactor 1 used to run, the first line didn't work with the cockpit, so what you had in the cockpit line was the only thing you had when in cockpit. It's changed, so what's on the outs, also in the first lines, does run with the cockpit, which obviously sucks. So we go back, so we definitely don't need that, so I'm just going to go 2 dots, easy reflect. Yeah, you can't see it in the ground, that's fine. I guess the only thing would be shadow cast. You can again do that, just copy, okay, copy, paste, and just, yeah, that shows the shadow cast in your in the cockpit view for those models again. Okay, so moving on to the steering wheel. The Brabhams is further down, as we can see here. It's called wheel. That's the steering wheel. We have an upgrade option, as you can see here. It's telling us you can change the GMT. Basically, I'm pretty sure what that will be is 2 dashes. So if I go up to daisy documents, if we go to our physics file, open up our upgrades, and simply just type in what it is. So wheel exists There you go, you can see there's a gap there to tell you yes, there would exist, and this is what so that is suggesting what should be there, so it would be nothing. And then if we go further down, I'm pretty sure, oh no, okay, oh, they're both saying nothing. Alright, basically that's not needed because we will be using rFactor 2's animation arms and driver. So I believe this wheel can just go because we're just going to use the GMT model, if I show you, which has no arms. So we'll do a comparison. I'll lay them both in, as you can see. One of the options was to load it in with the arms. The other one, which I'll use, has no arms, so normally we just want that. So we know that file is called, there we go, 312 T3S wheel. So if we go back to the wheel instance here, we can see we just want that for the steering wheel because that's the thing rotating. But like the others, we got to update it with the shadow caster. That's fine. The rest, here we go, front wing. I'm not sure the Brabham has a front wing. I could be wrong, I've not looked at it. No, it has a rear wing. So obviously the instants are telling what part of the body it is. So rear wing, front wing. Rear wing is obviously the rear wing you want. The last bit, it can be anything you want, but really it should be the rear wing of an F1 car, obviously. So if we load that in, that's clearly the rear wing, so we'll make that the rear wing instance, and it all relates to the damage file because on the instance it will try and find the name. So the rear wing has a specific damage setting, same with front wing, and you can adjust that in the damage. We'll go on to that later. Debris 5, 6, 7 and 8 are suspension files, so that's the same from rFactor 1 to rFactor 2. I believe it is still the same. Front left is debris 5, front right is 7 apparently. Maybe it's changed. For now I'll just leave it, it's not important to change. I don't know, here again, I don't want this. I don't think those GMTs actually exist. Maybe they did before, but they've obviously changed it. Exhaust exists. You can do basic, like just instant exhaust. In here it's got exterior parts for rFactor 2, and you can see it's got engine parts, cockpit parts, seats, mirrors, rivets. It's got all the stuff they didn't know where to put. So that's why it's good to use the old rFactor 1 gen, because it's normally pretty sorted. You know, it's all organised here. The only thing you have to do is make sure it's updated, and with the shadow casting, reflecting and stuff, and making sure the GMTs are still needed, because the steering wheel we didn't need. So everything here looks good. I mean, we don't need those, so I'm just going to delete that. It makes it easier. Side mirrors are debris free. I mean, you can also, I know this, you can call it mirrors. It will work as a mirror and won't fall off, but you can save it as debris free and it will fall off. It's your choice, really. But generally go with what's in the gen, because it normally works. If it doesn't, then you should change it. But I think for this one we're not going to load in a helmet. I always do this. Just because, you know, we don't need the driver to start with because it's not an animated one. The helmet is also maybe something you'll want to change, but I just want to get the car in game, and the pivot points on the helmet and visors have gone. It is more complex. Everything else looks good, but what I'm going to do is going to just update it, get rid of all these true solid 128 and just change it around. I'm going to use the baseline of what it's done at a loadout here, but again, it is your choice. There's no wrong answer. If you want to make it load out at 400, you can do, but generally the last body GNT loads out at 1000, and then everything else I do. The front wing I'll say 500, same with the rear wing, so it will load out at 500, not 5000, 500. You can't see that far, I think if you're doing 100, you'll definitely see it starting to disappear. So for the very last one, the normal last GMT, so for like the tyres, I'm going to make it 300. And I think you won't able to see it go away. You won't see it when it stops loading in. I think 300 is fine. You can go 1000, I guess. I mean, for now, I would personally leave it as it is, but I would update everything else that isn't the load in and load out, and make sure it's got shadow receiver. That's not necessary, but you can add it in just to make sure. Definitely the shadow casting needs to be added, the new shadow cast and reflect. And then once you've done that and make sure that when you're doing this you check, so you can do what I do is you can go to your maps and you can go, right, it's saying body max there, have I got it? If we look, there it is. It's simple as that. Make sure it's all there, otherwise you'll get into the game and it will say error in loading such and such GMT. So I'm going to do that for the tyres. Left front tyre is basically, you want that to be the tyre and the rim if it's two separate GMTs, and then the spindler is basically stuff that doesn't rotate with the wheel. So normally you put the brake disc in with the wheel if it moves, so it looks like the brake is, well, it is visually moving with the wheel. And then you want the brake disc, so the left front spindler, if we open this up, put that over here, if let's go, here we go, and it's the brake ducts and the pad. So you don't want that rotating around, so you put it in the spindle a bit, so it knows that if you break the wheel off, that comes off, but it doesn't move. So it's little details I like to add in or adjust. It's not going to break the game, don't worry, if the disc is here in this section and you want it there. It is a simple, just a copy and then paste. I don't want to do that. Move it back, that's easy enough. Also, don't worry about this, it's just the game doesn't read it. If you don't like it, you can get rid of it. It's basically just to tell you in more depth what is it. So right front tyre and spindler, okay, easy peasy. Doesn't change the game, doesn't make it stop, but you'd have to label each one effectively. The instance does that, so telling the game the instance, this is the wheel, makes it a wheel in terms of the damage. Well, it doesn't really get damaged, so that's the point, it knows what it is. I don't think it would work outside, I've not tried, it might do, but generally for a steering wheel you put it in this, front wing, generally that, and rear wing, because again it goes back to the damage file, which I'll look in a little bit of detail. The other stuff you may be questioning, like these two, I'll be honest, I have no idea what that means. But it should be false. I've never seen anything true for it. It should always be false. This is collision target, basically means does this GMT become target. Again, it just leave it as false. You don't need it anymore, I don't believe. We've never needed it to be true. If we look at the rFactor 2 one, again it's all false. And the collision one, the collision GMT is true. So that acts as a collision target, which is what this means, collision target. But again, all of them should be false. It's the same as rFactor 1, I don't think it would have changed, and if it is true, you can change it. I don't think it changes the game at all. Again, I've not had it as true. I probably should have experimented and made it true, but I've never seen a reason to. I've never been told to make it true, so I've just left it as false. Also, the position of where you put the shadow caster and all the extra, it doesn't matter. It can be at the end of the line, it can be here. I mean, I would recommend not doing it in between the load in and load out, just for the sake of, you know, those two go together, so they should be the two things that come. So you got load in, then load out, it shouldn't have anything in between, and I've never seen that happen. I've never seen anyone use a weird, it's normally at the end. So I've normally followed the same way. I normally put all the stuff at the end and I just leave it like that. Again, you can leave a space if you want. You've also got to have all one of these. That means end of instance, so this is telling you what it is. So beginning of what's in it. Movable true should always be there. and then the mesh file is obviously the body, so you got to be, it's a GNT, a GMT, and it is, yeah, make sure that's there, and that's there. So that's the end, saying that is the end of the front wing, this is the beginning of the front wing, and that's why you don't need these sections to break it up, because these are way more important. And as you can see, go to the start, there's one here, and it doesn't end here, it goes straight to another. That's because we go right to the bottom, there's two end ones here. Now these two, that's the start there for this and an end for this. So for that right rear, this is the end for the whole thing, and you definitely need that one at the end. If your document doesn't have two of those, that definitely means it's not going to load in correctly. It will load, but some things will load weirdly and the game won't work completely correctly. So it's critical. I normally go like that. But again, that's fine. That's fine. As long as there's two. It doesn't matter where it's positioned, as long as there are two, there should be no issues. And that's a critical thing to take out of it, if anything else. The rest isn't really needed. I mean, that's what you need to know. That's what I know, and it works for me, and I can work around it. It is just organisation and make sure everything flows and everything is connected, because if it's not connected, then you're going to have an issue, and if you're missing a little detail, it messes with the game, and so you got to start all over again. Upgrade files, start upgrades and stop upgrades here. That's basically, you want to put these in the stuff. Obviously we had the wheel in the cockpit, or it was just the wheel with the upgrade option, so really the start upgrade could have been just here, if I go like that. But it's always got to be, it doesn't have to be just before, it can be anywhere. You can have it right at the beginning like this one does, and then but the stop one has to be at the end to make it work. It's normally more critical for the spinner than the gem, because sometimes the spinner won't load it correctly, and then that's another issue. But since this file won't have any upgrades for this model, don't really need it. If your car does, again, don't delete it, leave it as it is, because obviously if it works in rFactor 1, it will work in rFactor 2 if you've just updated every other file, like I've shown you with the shadow casting, the reflect. It should work, you don't need to change it. And if you leave all these and you leave the upgrade file as it is and you bring it over, it should be all fine. So there we go, I've completely, well not almost, I've done everything, updated with all the shadow caster reflecting and shadow receiving. I've got rid of all the decimal points and made sure all the GMT are there. It's more organised to my liking, it does look a bit neater, and yeah, it does look all a bit the same I guess, but for me it's a bit easier to understand. Everything looks okay, doesn't mean it will be okay, maybe I'll hit an issue or two, but as far as I can see right now it's all good. So what I'm going to do, make sure I'm not going to keep this because that is just information for you, so I'm just going to go save. It saves the file, there we go, and if let's open that. So that means we finished the gem files. Now I remembered that I got the new gears from the Brabham, and I didn't change it. As we can see here, that's the gears, and we don't have anything else for gears. So I go back down here, yep, I'm searching for something like that, and I don't have it. But I'm going to rename this, just simply Ferrari 312T 2 gears. I'm just going to quickly copy it and paste, but because we're using new gears you have to go and back to the Brabham one, there it is. Quickly open that HDV and we're just going to copy the gear setting, because obviously the gears are a bit different as you can see here. Not exactly the same, so we're going to go all the way up to there and all the way to the gear bit, copy. So gears all the way down to the diff, paste, there we go. So I've updated everything. That was an issue I forgot to see earlier, that's now fixed. The cockpit should be fine. I mean, as you can see here, it's the eye point is position. Helpful, it normally has something here to tell you which, so this one is the left and right, up and down, positive is up, negative down, and backwards and forwards, negative is forward, positive is backwards. Camera target, this is for the camera outside the car, where is it exactly, swingman TV, and again a nice bit of helpful information here. It comes with most cars, and I think rFactor 2 has it as well, so if you're using it in someone else's position you can just see it is the same system. Mirror position, TV offset. TV offset is how it's offset to the TV cockpit view basically. Same as before, middle one's up and down, first one's left and right, last one is backwards and forwards, they're all the same. Mirror position, how is it positioned, how does it look in the cockpit, and how high, how low, how far back, left or right. Just basically you can adjust that. There's a bit of get rid of that. Front wheels in cockpit, that's, do you want to be able to see the front wheels in the cockpit? If you say 0 it means no, and it's normally for cars that have no holes in the bodywork or are open wheels, so you don't want to, it's basically if you can't even see the wheels when driving because it's all covered up, you might as well say no, because it does save a bit of FPS and you won't notice the difference. But because we've got an open wheel car, we leave it as 1, that means yes, so we will be seeing it. Cockpit vibrations, it's pretty obvious it's a vibration in the cockpit view. Steering wheel axis, where is it? So again, but since we've taken this should be pretty much good enough for us. Wheels offset is something they've not used and something I've not seen, so I'm just going to delete that. Head max positions and orientation, this is the movement basically. So the higher the number, the more it moves, and the more the head visibly vibrates and moves forwards, back, left and right when driving. You don't want it too much. Generally I take the rFactor 2 stuff they've done, so if we open the browser we can see there they've got it, so I could just copy and paste and put that in. I'm just going to leave it as is right now. RPM LED, this is telling you what is the RPM LEDs coming up. It's normally on more modern cars. This car I don't think will actually have it. We can check. We'll just go and open up all your files. It's normally for the LED flashlights when you see. Now I'm just going to go material and just check. No, we don't have any, so that's fine for us. That's fine, but normally if your car does have one, I'll show you an example. Just open it and we'll go like this and you can see, there you go. So in that cockpit file will be this name, so it will normally be just that. Now you got 28, get 28, 26 and 30, that's just when it comes on for your material. So 31 is the max, that's the top end limit of the engine, not necessarily the peak performance of the engine. So you can, normally people do it at 30, but you can do it at 31, but that's literally, there's nothing left, so you can hit the rev limiter immediately when it comes on. So they normally put it as 30 as a bit of a warning, and then you can manually adjust, so just name it here, let's go 24, and then okay, left click, here you go, it's changed to 24, 28 and 30 now, so it comes on a bit sooner, but I don't want to change that, so I'm going to go back, and I'll revert that because I want that. This other stuff is depending on what you have. Modern Motecs have all this, which is the digital readout, so you can see gears, the gears font, the material name of it here, so the background is the material name of the Motec gear bit, and then this is the size. And it's the same for all, they're just called different. So if you got gears, you call it gears. Place is position. Laps is what lap count basically, and LCD is the Motec, which goes through all the options you have on the right side. Now, because we've got an old-fashioned car, we have the tech readers. But again, if this has been done right in rFactor 1, essentially you don't need to change any of this. I mean, you might need to change the size or where it starts, but it should be working, and for now that's fine, you just leave it as it is. So you can see water temp range, so it's telling us the temperature ranges it goes through. and then the temp needle. It's basically there's a good reading here. So minimum value, max value, begin angle, end angle. So the first one is beginning, minimum. The next one is the max. This is where it begins. This is where it ends. But those two are the positions of the needle. So that's the important bit. And you can see here, this is the smallest number, the value, and this is the biggest. This is the angle it begins at, and this is the angle it ends at. So those two you can adjust. Those two last numbers are where you adjust to where you want your needle to go. If we go, you can see here. So here's the speed rev range, and it will obviously start about here, and it will go all the way up to near the red line. So in there, here it is. It's probably telling us that 65 will be the end, and that's roughly. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't tested it in game, but this is basically when you go in game, you can visibly see how it's changing and what it's doing, and where the end needle will stop. Background again is the material of the background. What does it look like? The needle is here, and then the red needle is there. There's normally two, obviously in this case. And it's the same for the other ones. It's pretty much the same format. It's the same format for the Motec. They're all similar, just different names. But again, if it's done right, it shouldn't need adjusting or massively changing. It might need adjusting, so I wouldn't worry too much. So everything in this file should already be okay. There's no links to files, and if it isn't got the material, if it can't find the material, it won't crash the game. It just means the needle or the digital readout won't be there. So you can deal with that for now. I don't think did I change? You know, I'm just gonna click save and close it. We don't need the Brabham one. I think, unfortunately, that's everything done now. I mean, the upgrades file, you can, because we're not using power assist upgrade, if you've got that, you can delete. We're not using the animation, the fake animation arm, so we'll delete. This is a shifting option here, so basically change the drive line of if you are grating the shifter, or basically changing the way it works the gearbox. But I think we'll just stick to because we've got all these options where you can have auto clutch on and all that. I think we're just going to get rid of that because it's not needed, but that is effectively how it works. So you tell it the upgrade file, so you normally have upgrade level normal, and this one you leave blank. So you can hear there's nothing changed, there's just a description, which will come up in the spinner upgrades file. And then this one obviously has changes here made, so it's telling you, it's telling the game, look in the HDV file, then go to driveline bit. You got to do it for each bit, so you got to go, so that's just basically where it is. Then everything you want to change in the gearbox bit, you label each bit, so you do that, but always equals, and you tell the value. So if we go to ours, basically it's telling us to go into this file, and then it's telling us to go to driveline, so we go to driveline, here it is. So we've gone to driveline, and then it's telling us to go to upshift delay. So upshift delay, there we go, it's telling it to be 0, upshift clutch time to be 0, it's already 0. Basically it's every line here, before wasn't here, but because we've changed it, and because I want it to be realistic, I'm just going to delete that. We don't need anything upgrade. There's no visual upgrades, only the arms on the wheels, so we don't need that anymore. And AI list, that's not needed, but the class thing, we can leave that, or you can leave it blank, so we'll just save that. Obviously you've got the backups, so everything you change, if you ruin it, you've got the backups here, which is why I do it purposely, so just in case you mess up, take that file, take what's inside it, and just do it again, just in case you save it and it's ruined. But as far as I know, I mean, we haven't done the spinner, but I'll open that quickly. Spinner is the same as the gen, it's just less. You just want the max body values in, so you can see it starts off the same, it's the body bit. That spin body is not normally there, we don't need that because it's just a duplicate of that, so it's the same as gen before, everything will just load as one though. If you've got double, if you've put 2 mesh files for the body max, you don't need it, that's just it's waste of space and might ruin the game. the same as before. You've got an instant steering wheel, got a front wing, rear wing, and a debris. All this, it's the same as the Gen before, but you just need the max detailed one, because it's obviously a spinner, not going in game. It's two different files, two different systems. So again, I'm just going to update that, but theoretically this should work anyway. The only thing you might want to change is the search path, which we did before, but because it's the same, all you're going to do is do this and do that. Now the reflect panel, always keep that, because that's the shadow, that's the reflecting of the car onto the ground. So it's a spinner's reflecting panel, always keep that there. If you don't have it, it's not a big deal, but I'm just going to keep it. I'm going to save that. I mean, this should all work. There's no reason, there's nothing upgraded. All the GMTs are there. So I'm just going to click out that, and I think everything's ready, so we'll move on to the teams now. So for the teams, what we're going to do is going to make a new folder and just call it teams, and this is, we're going to go back into our game data for rFactor 1. I know where this is, and I'm going to go into Ferrari. Oh no, I don't, I tell a lie. All teams for me, and then number 2 is for some reason the Ferrari. You've got all these skins and all these, I just get it up, these files, FEH files. I'll open one up and show you. This is the description for what is the car using. So this goes in the team mass file. This default livery line is telling you the default file it should be using to load the skin on the car. You do get, it's basically telling you the name of that skin, and everything else should follow suit. Then you've got the basic line of HDV vehicle, so what's the vehicle's HDV called? Now this is where it has to link up. But before we do any of that, I'm just going to quickly, let's go take just a normal, because there's so many. It's a ridiculous amount. Okay. This is a lot. So you might get this, you might get so many skins, and it is all the same. I mean, let's just make sure you're using a T2 one. You are. Right, so make sure you get the right pen. I'm going to take that one. You only need one for now, I guess, just to get it in game. So go back, paste, let's open it, there you go. All the stuff before is just again description of saying how you can make it work, but that one's only for rFactor 1. So again, delete. You can leave that, that's fine, that's just telling the skin. If you don't have it, it should still work, because it will load what's in the default here. So it's obviously got materials. So if it was just a white car, I just prove sometimes it's like this, it will look like that. It's a bit odd, but we've already got a skin on, so it will look kind of okay. This line, you don't need to tell it where the location is, you just need to tell it the name. So we'll go back to our physics folder, find it, there it is. Let's go rename, copy it, and we're just going to go paste, like that. Same again, graphics, what we called it exactly the same thing, but for the purpose of it, I'm just going to go like that, and I'm going to go copy, there we go. Spinner is the same, just called spinner. Gen string is basically, if you've got in the game, in the gen file, sorry, anything like this, and a 1, I'll do a big example. That's in, if that's in the gem file and it's like wheel.gmt, it's effectively telling you here, it goes to the ven file and looks for the first, second, third, fourth and fifth numbers or letters put here. So if I go Ferrari T2, so it's saying take these first 5 and put it here, so you put it there and it says look for that GMT, and normally that GMT does exist, but because we're not using it you don't need anything. But also you can do stuff like, if you need to go 1, 3, 5, you only take the first, the third and the fifth letters or numbers. So if we do it again, So you only want the F, the R and the T, so it would look like FR2, not the T, there you go. So it can work like that. It is a bit complex, but that's the basic norm of it. It's not used as much, it can be used, but it's not used as much as before. But because again, as I said, we don't actually have any, we don't need it. We'll just do that, leave it blank. Ferrari sounds, it's called this, so it is still the same. Yep. The cameras, I believe, is still the same. Yep. Just gonna be like head physics. We didn't copy head physics, so I'm gonna go back and I'm just gonna borrow rFactor 2s because it will be pretty good. You don't have any? Oh dear. Where's your head? Alright, we're gonna steal the rFactor 1. That's alright. Anyway, just export it. That's fine. Stick it in here. It's still called head physics. So just place it there. Head physics is just basically how the head reacts. Cameras is pretty explanatory. The cockpit is a cockpit information file, so I'm going to go back. I'm just going to paste. Upgrades file is the upgrades one, but obviously there's nothing in it, so it's not disastrous. You don't actually need it, but there you go. Now base vehicle and unlock experience. This is the price and how much experience you need to unlock it. We don't use any more in rFactor 2, so delete. We just don't need it. The number of the car, that's not crucially important. Team name is just what's the team name. Pit group is actually what will be in the pit lane. So group, you get group 1, and then group 2 means it's not the first pit box or the last pit box. Whatever the track designates number 1 pit box and number 2. So number 1 is sometimes at the front of the pit lane, sometimes at the end. So you can put it as any number, you can put it as 20 if you want. It just tells it how far up the pit lane it should be. It's not hugely critical, but if you're doing an F1 series or any motorsport series, you can effectively make the pit boxes in order. So if you put, say, let's do modern, you put Mercedes first, then you put Ferrari, then you put Red Bull. So you put Mercedes as group 1, Ferrari as group 2, and Red Bull as group 3. So it represents almost a realistic real life, but obviously rFactor 2 doesn't take into account one team has one box, and if you did Mercedes as 1 and 2, they wouldn't have to pit in the same, they don't load in the same box as well, it will just move it up higher. So if you've got this as 2, you've got 2 Ferraris as group 2, it will put them in 3 and 4 if you've got a team in front that's group 1, because they'll take 1 and 2, you can't load in the same box. Again, it's not hugely important, but if you want more realistic, that's what you want. Driver name is important, make sure you get that right, because that's the name that goes in the rFactor 2 description when loading the AI, and also for the talent file, we'll go on to that a bit later on in further depth description. That's just a name you load for when picking the cars in game, and the list, when you click on the list, that's the description. Engine, that's not hugely important, but again, if you want to be historically correct, you can enter that. Manufacturer, again, isn't hugely important. Classes is the selection group you choose when, before going to track, you can choose what classes you want. So you normally get, here you can see the obvious one, F1 1978, but if you want to, you can make it more specific, so you can do F1 1978 Ferrari. So if you click that in game, it would only load this class, but you've got to make sure all these files are linked up. So you could do, for another one, Renault, or if you wanted to do Lotus. So when you go to track, only these models will be loaded, but make sure that's correct for each individual car if you want to do it. Full team name should be the same as this team name. These are just information for you to add, but category is where it loads in the game, so where is it placed in the list. So it's going to be under F1 1978, then under Scuderia Ferrari, and then you can click that car. For now, that's all been updated, and as far as I can see, that's okay. So I'm just going to save, close out, and now we're going to move on to actually getting it into the game. So here we go, we're going to get rid of that and that. Here we go. So you want to open your Mass 2 tool again, and click that button there, which opens this. You want to go to your documents or where you put it, and we're going to go to physics first, just going to highlight everything, open, and in this little icon here, create the mass file. This now creates your mass file. So we called it Ferrari 3112T2. And then we're going to call it the main, because this is where all the physics and the main is, so we'll call it main, so it's not confused. Save that, and it's done. If we just go back to where it is, and we'll open the gem file, and you can see, yep, we named it like that, so just going to copy that just in case. Go back, rename, and make sure it's correct, and yep, pretty much is. So, going to click new one, that icon again. Now I'm going to go to maps, go to this one, and I'm just going to highlight everything down here, open, same again, do that, but we can go back here, and we call it that, and we named it maps, so I'll call it maps, save. Now that's got all the, this has all the body and the GMT in it, and the textures, and that has all the physics. So we need just one more, and that's the teams, one file obviously, but we'll add skins later, but for now you don't need it. We're going to call it that, and then we're going to call it basically teams. Easy peasy. You don't need sounds, this will have no sound in it, but we'll get to sounds later. It's the same, you get all the sound files and you put it into a mass file and you make sure it's called that, but I'll get onto that later. For now you want to click this, create the package. So when you click this, this is how you're going to get your car into rFactor. Now you get 4 options. To get your car into game, you're going to go this one, you create single package. If you're just doing one car, no. Sneaky peek at the work. Now, edit component name, this is basically what do you want it to come up as the list on here. So what when you, it will come up there. I would again just go with what you used before. We know it's called that, so that's great. Now the package file, the package, what we're going to name it, rFactor 2. Now you can put in a version like this, so let's do that. You can leave it as just that, it is your choice. I'm going to do that as I do, so the packages never conflict. Version number, make sure that's different every time, obviously it will conflict again. Now you want to select what it is, it's not a location, it's not sounds, it is a vehicle, so we click vehicle. Now if you want to get even more precise, you go info here, and then category here. Now you get all these, and well, it's an open wheel, we know that. There should be plenty to choose from and should fit, and you go OK, because if you do that, you get the description here, so it tells you it's a vehicle and it's an open wheel. That's good for the game and good for us as fans. So now we go back to documents, you click the button there and it opens up like this again. Here we go. Now make sure you don't get confused, but these 3 are the ones we've made, and one, open that. Now click package, click it, and once you get that message, it's normally pretty quick, sometimes longer, that means it's done packaging. Then you want to go, actually I'll just show you, if I refresh, look at that, there it is, but it's not installed. If you want to just install it there and then, click install, component installed, OK, and then you click done to save it, click out, refresh, there you go. Let's go and see if it works in game. And here we go, and there's been no issues, so it works in game. Let's have a look. As you can see, it's a little bit shiny. Definitely needs some work on the textures, but we'll do that later on. But we'll just quickly drive it. Yep, no issues with physics, so it hasn't crashed. Straight through the car. It just rotates on the bottom axis. It's so shiny, it's ruining the shaders on my ruined PC. But yeah, rotating, we'll get the pivot point back so it's better. And yeah, we'll sort all the shininess, get it down to a nice shine, not the... That's pretty bad, but yeah. Thanks for watching, hope you got your car in game. If you didn't, leave a comment or message me on the Facebook group. And then I will get back to you and help you in any way. And stay tuned for future videos.